I never thought the most painful part of burying my mother would be what was said after the casket was closed. We were all gathered in the small community church she had insisted on in her will. No music, no frills, just wooden pews, a few floral arrangements, and a tight circle of family who didn't quite know how to grieve her. I was sitting in the second row, next to my daughter Lila, just 8 years old, legs swinging, holding my hand tight. My brother, Mason, stood up to speak. Of course he did. Mason was always the one who took the spotlight, the one who could do no wrong in my mother's eyes. He smiled like he was giving a toast, not a eulogy. She always called me her sunshine, he said I made her laugh when life got hard, that no matter what happened, she was proud of me. There were soft chuckles, nods, even a sniffle or two. I sat there, still, feeling like I was watching a movie I wasn't a part of. Then my uncle, my mother's brother, Rick, cleared his throat from behind us. Evelyn was a complicated woman, he said loudly, but it's no secret she had a favorite. She never cared much for her daughter. No one laughed this time, but no one disagreed either. I felt it like a punch to the chest. Mason didn't even flinch. My father avoided eye contact, staring at the floor like the tiles suddenly became fascinating. My cousins looked around awkwardly, but not one person said a word in my defense. No one said, "That's not true." No one said, "Isla deserved better." No one said anything. I swallowed hard and blinked back tears. I didn't want to cry in front of them. Not them. Not now. Lila squeezed my hand. I looked down at her, and she looked up at me with those big, questioning eyes. She knew something was wrong. She always knows. I opened my mouth to say something. I didn't even know what, maybe defend myself or leave or scream. But before I could speak, Lila stood up. She walked to the front of the room holding something in her hand, an envelope. She must have found it this morning when she wandered around Grandma's study while I got ready. Everyone turned toward her, confused. A few people even smiled gently, thinking maybe she'd say something sweet about her grandmother. Instead, she held up the envelope and asked, clear as day, voice trembling but steady, "Then why did Grandma leave this for my mom?" Silence. Real silence. Not the kind that comes from grief, but the kind that comes from guilt. Froze. My heart pounded so loud in my ears I could barely hear her next words. She said I wasn't allowed to open it. She said only Mommy could. Every eye in the room was on us. On her. On me. I reached out and took the envelope from her tiny hands, fingers trembling. I looked at the handwriting, my mother's, my name, written in blue ink. To Isla. I didn't even know what was inside yet, but in that moment, for the first time in my life, I felt something shift. The narrative was breaking. The truth was coming. And it came from the one person who never doubted me, my daughter. It's strange, isn't it? How you can be in a room full of people you've known your whole life and still feel completely alone. That's exactly how I felt when I stepped back into my childhood home for the first time in 5 years. Everything was the same, and not in a comforting way. The outdated wallpaper, the dusty rose-colored rug my mother refused to replace, the scent of lavender and lemon wood polish clinging to every surface like a ghost. Even the silence felt familiar, the kind that never welcomed you, only judged you quietly from the corners. I stood in the foyer for a moment, Lila tugging gently at my coat. "Is this where you grew up, Mommy?" she whispered. I nodded, offering a tight smile. "Yeah, baby, this is it." She looked around with curious eyes, trying to piece together who her grandmother was, why we were really here, and why everyone else seemed so stiff, so cold. I didn't know what to tell her. I wasn't even sure how I felt about being there. The truth is, I didn't cry when I got the call that Mom had passed. I didn't collapse into a chair or scream into a pillow. I sat on my couch, holding the phone in one hand and a lukewarm cup of tea in the other, feeling nothing. Just a dull, hollow ache somewhere in my chest, like I had lost something I was never given in the first place. My mother, Evelyn Monroe, was a woman people called complicated when they wanted to be polite. In truth, she was cold, not in a cruel, overtly abusive way, but in a quiet, meticulous way that made you feel like warmth was something you had to earn. Mason earned it easily, or maybe she just decided he deserved it. He was the golden boy, charming, athletic, loud in the way that got applause instead of eye rolls. When he messed up, it was a boys will be boys moment. When I messed up, it was a character flaw. I don't remember her ever hugging me, not without stiffness, not without purpose. She loved structure, appearances, being the good family at church. What she didn't love was softness, emotion, or anything that came from me. Still, I tried. For years, I tried. I brought home straight A's. I joined the choir. I stopped arguing. I said yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, and folded my sweaters the way she liked. But it was never enough. Eventually, I stopped trying and started planning how I'd get out. And I did. I went to college across the country, met a man who loved me differently, soft, open, honest, then lost him too soon. Cancer doesn't care how badly you need someone to stay. After that, it was just me and Lila. She became my reason for everything. Every late night, every scraped knee I kissed, every school drop-off, I was determined to be the mother I never had, to give her words of encouragement, real hugs, unconditional love, things that should have come naturally. But I had to learn from scratch. Coming back for the funeral was never about closure. I knew better than to expect that. I came because it felt like a final obligation. One last duty in a long line of unreciprocated efforts. I didn't know there would be a letter. I didn't know the truth had been hiding all along. And I definitely didn't know it would be my daughter, the youngest voice in the room, who would finally say what I never could. But standing in that house, before any of it happened, I just felt tired. Like I was walking into a performance where I didn't know my lines. I was the daughter no one really saw, at least not until she made them look. I thought I could make it through the funeral without unraveling. I kept telling myself, just smile politely. Speak when spoken to. Leave before the wine starts flowing. I had rehearsed it like a script. I didn't want a scene. I didn't want sympathy. I just wanted to endure it quietly for Lila's sake. But I underestimated my family. I always do. The service itself was short, minimal. A few Bible verses, a few stifled sobs, none of them mine. I sat stiffly beside Lila, wearing the same black dress I wore to her father's funeral. I didn't know what to feel. I didn't know if I was allowed to feel anything at all. Afterward, we all shuffled back to the family house. The mood was stiff, like a gathering of coworkers rather than a family in mourning. Cheap coffee, cold finger sandwiches, a few forced hugs. I wandered into the kitchen to escape the small talk, but Mason found me anyway. He didn't say hi. He never does. "You look tired," he said, grabbing a bottled water from the fridge like he owned the place. "Funerals'll do that to you, huh?" I nodded, biting my tongue. Then came the speech. I didn't know he planned to speak. No one told me there would be speeches at the reception. But of course, Mason took the moment. He tapped his glass with a butter knife like it was a damn wedding. "Can I say a few words?" he asked, already standing in the middle of the room. People smiled, a few clapped. I stood frozen near the doorway, heart pounding, arms folded tight across my chest. He launched right in. "She always told me I was her sunshine," he began. No matter what was going on, she'd say, "Mason, you light up my world." That's who Mom was. She believed in me, pushed me. She said I was destined for something big. I felt something sour crawl up my throat. I glanced at Lila, who was sitting quietly in the corner, coloring. She wasn't listening, yet. Then came the gut punch. "She always said she didn't understand girls much," Mason chuckled. "She used to say Isla was different, sensitive, too emotional, not like me." The room chuckled with him, a light, dismissive laugh, like it was all just quirky family banter. But then Uncle Rick, sitting with a bourbon in hand, leaned forward and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Evelyn never really cared for her daughter. Not her fault. Some women just aren't built for it." And just like that, I was erased, reduced to a footnote in my own mother's life. No one objected, not my father, who sat quietly staring into his drink, not my cousins, not even Mason, who just smiled and sipped his water like it was the most natural thing in the world. I felt heat rise in my chest, shame, fury, humiliation, boiling all at once. I opened my mouth, ready to say something, anything, but no words came. I was choking on years of silence I had swallowed whole. Then I felt Lila's hand slip into mine. She looked up at me with big, knowing eyes. And then, before I could stop her, she stood up and walked to the front of the room, small, brave, holding an envelope in her hand. "Then why," she said, her voice shaking, "did Grandma leave this for my mom?" And just like that, the room went silent. Like someone had sucked the oxygen straight out of the air. The conflict wasn't just mine anymore. It had been passed to the one person I refused to let this family break. My daughter. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. My daughter's voice, small, clear, echoing in a room that had never once been kind to me, hung in the air like a challenge. Then why did Grandma leave this for my mom? No one spoke. No one moved. Even Mason, always so quick with words, always so smug, just stared at her, blinking. Uncle Rick cleared his throat, his expression twisting into something between confusion and irritation, like a child had just ruined his favorite story. Lila walked over to me and placed the envelope in my hand, like it was a gift she had carried carefully all day. It was thin, soft, slightly yellowed, and my name was written in a delicate cursive I recognized immediately. To Hila. I could feel the air shift in the room. Something unspoken was unraveling. That envelope, it didn't just hold paper, it held power. And for the first time in my life, I had it. I looked down at Lila. Her eyes were filled with a kind of sadness no 8-year-old should have to carry. She didn't understand everything, but she understood enough. She had seen the way they treated me. She had felt the cold. And this was her way of standing between me and it. I brushed her hair back from her face and whispered, "Thank you, baby." I held the envelope close to my chest and stepped forward. Not to the center of the room, not to make a scene, but just enough so they could all see me. "My daughter asked a fair question," I said, my voice a little hoarse but steady. "If my mother didn't care about me, why did she leave me this?" Uncle Rick scoffed under his breath. "Probably just her old bank paperwork. Evelyn liked to keep every receipt." I ignored him. I turned the envelope over, heart pounding like a drum. I didn't even know if I wanted to read what was inside, but something in me, a part that had been quiet for years, said, "Do it anyway." So I opened it. Inside were 2 things, a single handwritten letter and a small silver key taped to the bottom corner. I unfolded the letter carefully. The room was dead silent. "Hila, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And it means I waited far too long to say the things I should have said when I was alive." I took a deep breath and continued. "I didn't know how to be a mother to you. That's not an excuse, it's just the truth. You were everything I wasn't. Soft, emotional, thoughtful. I saw those things as weakness. Because when I was your age, I had to bury mine to survive. But I was wrong. I've been watching you from a distance all these years, and I've seen the kind of mother you've become. I see how Lila looks at you, with trust, with love. You did what I couldn't, and I'm proud of you for that." The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. I hadn't cried in front of my family in over a decade, and now with my mother gone, I couldn't stop. The letter ended with this: "There's a journal in my bedroom closet, locked in a blue box. Use the key. It's yours. Everything I was too afraid to say is inside. I hope it finds you in time. Mom." I looked up. The silence had shifted from smug superiority to discomfort. No one knew what to say. For once, they didn't know how to rewrite the story. And I wasn't done uncovering it. The room didn't breathe while I held the letter in my hands. The same people who had spent years dismissing me were now watching me like I had become someone else entirely, someone they couldn't explain. I didn't say a word. I folded the letter gently, slipped it back into the envelope, and held up the tiny silver key taped to the corner. I knew exactly where it belonged. My mother's bedroom hadn't changed much. The same floral comforter, the same stiff pillows. The air still smelled like rosewater and mothballs. I opened her closet door slowly, heart thudding in my ears, and there it was on the top shelf, a dusty blue velvet box. I pulled it down, sat on the bed, and unlocked it. Inside was a leather-bound journal, thick, worn around the edges. There were bookmarks, ribbons hanging out like veins, and pages filled with her handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened to the first one. March 12, 1993, Hila's first choir solo. I froze. I remembered that day. I was 9. I had worn a blue dress that was a size too big and had stumbled over the last verse. I was sure she hadn't even noticed. But now... She looked so scared before she went up there. I almost told her she didn't have to sing, but she did. Her voice was shaky but beautiful. I didn't say anything afterward, I don't know why. She looked at me, waiting, and I just said, "Good job." That wasn't enough, but it was all I could get out without crying. I turned the page, then another, and another. I watched her grow up feeling invisible, and I let it happen. She thought I loved Mason more. Maybe I did, or maybe I just understood him more. But Isla, she was the brave one. There were dozens of entries like that, memories of moments I had long buried because I thought they meant nothing to her. But they had lived inside her this whole time, written in ink, protected in silence. I hadn't just been seen, I had been remembered. I came back downstairs, journal in hand, eyes swollen and cheeks flushed. Lila looked up at me from her spot on the couch. I smiled at her, and she smiled back with that quiet knowing children seem to be born with. The room had mostly settled, but the energy had shifted. Mason looked up from his phone. Uncle Rick sipped his drink like it had gone sour. No one said anything, until I did. "I used to think my mother didn't love me," I said, "but I was wrong." I opened the journal and read aloud just one entry, the one from my choir solo. Just enough. Just the first few lines. When I looked up, the room was still. Mason's smirk was gone. For the first time, his face showed something that looked like doubt. Uncle Rick cleared his throat again, but this time said nothing. My father looked away. I closed the journal slowly and looked at my daughter, my anchor in the storm. "She didn't say the words out loud," I said, "but she wrote them, and maybe that's the only way she knew how to love me." And then I turned to leave. I didn't need their apologies. I didn't need their validation. I had the truth, and I had a daughter who made sure I found it. That day started with a burial, but what I found felt like a resurrection. It's been 3 weeks since my mother's funeral. The flowers are long gone, the casseroles were tossed out after they expired untouched in the fridge, and the Monroe family has gone back to whatever version of silence they prefer. But I've changed. Not dramatically. I didn't quit my job or shave my head or write a dramatic Facebook post about healing and forgiveness. I'm still me, still Isla, still a single mother trying to balance work and bedtime stories and the constant quiet fear of messing it all up. But something inside me feels lighter, like I finally dropped a weight I didn't realize I was carrying. The journal sits on my nightstand now. Some nights I read just one page. Other nights I flip through a dozen. Each entry is a window into a woman I spent my life trying to understand, and sometimes hating for not trying to understand me. But I see her now. I see the struggle between love and fear in her words. I see someone who didn't know how to be soft because the world hadn't allowed her to be. Someone who believed strength meant silence. That emotion was a weakness to be hidden, not shared. She wasn't the mother I needed, but she left me the truth, and somehow, that's becoming enough. I think what hurts the most is realizing how much she wanted to say these things to me while she was still here. Maybe she planned to. Maybe she ran out of time. Or maybe she thought the letter and the journal were safer than a face-to-face conversation. Whatever the reason, I found it, and it found me. Lila still asks about her. Last night she said, "Was Grandma sad a lot?" And I said yes, gently, but added, "She also loved deeply, even if she didn't always show it right." Then she asked, "Will I be like her?" And I said, "You'll be like you. But you'll always know you're loved." Out loud. That's the legacy I'm choosing to build. Not silence, not shame. Not the brittle kind of strength that hides its heart, but softness, words, truth. I started writing letters to Lila, just a few lines each night, not because I expect to leave early like my mom did, but because I don't ever want her wondering how I felt. I want her to have more than memories and secondhand stories. I want her to have proof. I write about how she laughs with her whole body when she's excited, how she tells the truth even when it's hard, how proud I am when she stands up for someone else, like she did for me that day. That moment is burned into my heart. She stood for me when no one else did. Not because she was told to, not because she understood all the history, but because she felt something was wrong and she wanted it made right. That's courage. That's love. That's the kind of woman I'm raising. If you asked my family now, I don't know what story they'd tell. Maybe they're still trying to hold on to the version where I was just the outsider, the oversensitive daughter, the black sheep. But I know better. I know the truth my mother left behind. On paper, yes, but also in me. Sometimes love comes too late. Sometimes it comes in strange forms. And sometimes it takes a child's voice to pull it out of the shadows. This story didn't begin with a funeral. It began with a girl who thought she was unloved. And it ended with her realizing she was never invisible, just unread. And if you're still here, thank you. Thank you for listening to my story. Maybe you felt what I felt, like your voice was too quiet to matter, like your love was never seen. Or maybe you've had to become the kind of parent you never had. If any part of this hit home, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Tell me your story. Or just say hi and I read every single one, and your words matter here. If you found something in this video that moved you, helped you, or made you think of someone, please give it a like, share it with a friend, and make sure you subscribe to the channel. There's so much more we're going to talk about. Stories that matter, that heal, that remind us we're not alone. And remember, you are not invisible. You are not unread. You are seen. You are loved. I'll see you in the next one.